What is some dark shit going on around the world right now that the public probably doesn't know about? I think we need a subreddit or news website dedicated to that kind of non-trending and barely known but actually very important news. Is there something like that out there? Behind every polished business facade is a hodgepodge of systems that are hacked together to service you. Data protection is second to revenue. All the networks and system engineers have the power truly steal all your data. 9% of Eritrea's population is slaves. The prevalence of modern-day slavery is way more than people like to talk about. Women going missing from Indian reservations across some of the U.S. Many are young women and probably being used for sex trafficking. There are some interesting podcasts on the subject. The clients of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell are still pedophiles, and still free, putting innocent children at risk. Sex trafficking in Ukraine. How better to disappear young women and children than during wartime? Somalia is pretty much gone at this point, facing war and one of its worst famines in ages. It would be a miracle if they make it through. How about state-level law enforcement stealing identifiable property out of evidence control to pay snitches with it? Source: I lost my career over exposing this practice and everyone involved was promoted. Every day a different person asks a slightly reworded question about what men or women want on AskReddit. In America there are corporations such as BlackRock buying up tons of houses, whole neighborhoods really. They're paying higher than asking price. They will then be permanently renting them out and it will further destroy the middle class/working class. They will make middle class PPL permanent renters. And our politicians on both sides of the aisle are letting this happen because they take the deforestation of Europe. The last protected ancient forests in Europe, mostly in the east, are cut down by big furniture companies from Finland and Austria. The people trying to protect the forests, activists, journalists, park rangers, are being intimidated, beaten and killed, while the police is looking the other way, or sometimes even participating in the abuse. Basically the same thing like in the Amazon basin, but with a lot less visibility. 70% of the world's chocolate comes from West Africa. An estimated 1.5 million child slaves are engaged in chocolate production in Ghana and the Ivory Coast, alone, not counting Nigeria and Cameroon. I do not hear enough about FGM. A brutally disgusting practice used to control women. Turn back, weary traveler. You have enough going on right now. Nothing in this thread is within your span of control and will only make you sad. Unless you have the money, power, or a workable idea to resolve global issues, there is nothing for you here. In another thread like this, somebody mentioned the random sniper killings actively going on in Louisiana on I think the I-10 freeway. There's somebody out there randomly shooting people on the freeway and there's a pretty large dead tally. For whatever reason it's not in the news. Female infanticide, i.e. the deliberate killing of newborn female children, is still happening in rural India. A full-term newborn baby is buried alive if unfortunate enough to be female. The mother is usually trying to get pregnant right after, until she finally gives birth to the prized male child. Propaganda is being used by several countries. Most of the Western countries' people forgets that propaganda can be used in a complex context through mass media. Always think critically and forge your opinions on a subject based on multiple sources and medias around the world. A horrific percentage of the ships sailing around on our oceans are staffed by people who are either outright slaves, or working in extreme indentured slavery circumstances. Human trafficking. You can literally be victim of this while visiting other places or on your vacations. Right now there are thousands of people that are being trafficked as mere objects. Humanity has wiped out 60% of animal populations since 1970. The extent of fisheries and ocean life's collapse. Alaska just put the emergency brakes on its entire snow crab fishery as the numbers suddenly fell off a cliff. Same for many salmon species, wild fish, etc. https://www. National Geographic. com/animals/articles/seafood biodiversity. Plenty of fish in the sea seems like an saying that will be true forever, but it won't be. I have seen estimates that there would just be no commercially viable fishing by 2048. We are scraping the bottom of the ocean and emptying it of life. Sex trafficking is a multinational $150 billion industry. Operation Underground Railroad, https://www. Our rescue. org/. In Africa there is a very real and very extensive slave trade going on right now, to say nothing of the other probably 40 million living in bondage. The fact that Syria is still tearing itself apart and nobody cares. In a handful of really poor regions around the world, managers of orphanages sometimes tip off the local pumps that a girl is about to age out of the system and end up on the streets. When the managers are actually halfway decent humans, the tip money they get goes to feed the smaller kids. Shitty managers obviously view that money as a side hustle to make having the main job worthwhile. France just deployed the Foreign Legion to secure gas fields and process plants in Yemen, in order to reduce their dependence on Russian LNG. Saudi Arabia is involved in a brutally aggressive war against Yemen. It has been called the biggest humanitarian crisis of the decade by some. Western governments are currently supplying Saudi with weapons that are immediately turned on Yemeni civilians. Millions of people are famished. France has just deployed there essentially on the side of Saudi Arabia, literally stealing Yemeni resources despite public outcry in France. Mixed Japanese-Congolese kids left as orphans after a Japanese business left the Congo in the 70s. https://www. France 24. com/n/201000316 Katanga's Forgotten People. 8,000 women are burned to death every year over dowry disputes in India. This figure does not count women killed by other means or women who survived the burning or women killed for reasons other than dowry disputes. The labor used to build the upcoming FIFA World Cup stadiums. That 90+% of the local news you're seeing is basically just the same newscast from Texas to Florida, from Alaska to Washington. They just add in a traffic wreck or 7-Eleven shooting. The people that sit in those chairs are puppets. I moved to Sydney 2 weeks ago, and can't believe how many public suicides there are. It's almost every day someone kills themselves from jumping from a building or in front of a train. I catch the train almost every day and it feels like a matter of time before I see one happen myself. We're in a massive mental health crisis right now and it's extremely hard to get help. Most of what is really happening in Iran isn't being reported. Well, maybe I shouldn't have read all these comments. I'm in Mexico right now. Indigenous children are being sold for rape in the state of Guerrero like pieces of meat. Government turns a blind eye and civilians are threatened by the cartel. It's messed up. Many of us have probably gone past houses where there is somebody being held prisoner and had no idea. The drift toward authoritarian rule and the dissolution of democracy. People are dying BC, they can't afford their overpriced medication. A very easy save, just price gouging and horrible healthcare. Big corporations are buying up all the houses in the US, thereby keeping the supply low and prices high. These houses will not be put back on the market for at least 20 years. They will be long-term rentals. This is killing the American dream. Human trafficking kids through the foster care system. The ethnic food service industry in the US is absolutely riddled with what amounts to slavery. Child trafficking and sex trafficking get tons of publicity. However, most towns in the US have multiple restaurants in which workers are housed in nearly unlivable conditions and paid such a low wage that they are basically prisoners. Female circumcision in some African countries. The US passed a law against this in 1996, but a federal judge ruled it unconstitutional. The upcoming FIFA World Cup in Qatar is happening because FIFA is one of the most corrupt organizations in sports, and because a lot of indentured servants were trapped in Qatar and died from heat and being worked to death building the stadium. The temperature in Qatar at the time of the upcoming cup, I believe, is supposed to be over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It is a huge humanitarian disaster but will likely be ignored and rug-swept like it has been, and FIFA and Qatar will probably still make wild profits off of this event. https://www.amnesty.org/n/latest/campaigns/2016/03/Qatar World Cup of Shame/ Teaching kids in their native Tibetan language at school was recently made illegal by the Chinese government. Modern-day slavery is much more common than people think. Except for now, the rich convince poor immigrants to move to their country with promise of work and wealth. When they get there, they steal their passports and basically anything identifying them and force them to do whatever kind of work they want for whatever pay they want. I've read stories of entire families being trapped for years and years with no way out. Mass kidnapping of school children in Nigeria and other African nations, and the only ones talking about it since 2021 is UNICEF. Saudi Arabia sentencing to death people who refuse to move out of their homes so that they can build Neom, their new mega-city. And their relatives being sentenced to multiple decades of prison time just for protesting or merely posting their support to the cause on social media. Thanks for sharing all this, guys. I don't think I'm living past 50 now. That the vast majority of slavery still existing in the world right now is for agricultural purposes. And by slavery, I mean people owned by other people and forced to do work for no pay, as opposed to people doing what they need to do out of necessity and accepting what pittance they receive in return. And the produce is sold on the regular market, meaning that there is a non-zero chance that you have brought vegetables that were grown by literal slaves. Bacterial resistance to antibiotics is at an alarming level. There has already been instances of pan-antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria. This can throw us back to the pre-antibiotic era, which will effectively mean catch an infection and die. No big pharma wants to invest in